There are so many Bible translations, but how do I know which one is right for me? Hey everyone, I'm Kevin Gatmeyer and this is Grow in Truth. Today, I want to help you choose the right Bible translation that best suits your needs. To do this, I want to give you 4 things to consider before making that purchase. And just as a quick tip, Bibles can get very expensive, but that has less to do with the translation and more to do with the content that comes with that specific Bible. So things like commentaries or word studies is going to determine the price of the Bible that you purchase. But all the translations that we cover in this video will have those extra biblical options if that is what you're looking for. Oh, and stick around to the end so that I can share with you which translations I use and why. So the first thing to consider is, are you a new Christian? When it comes to translations, each one falls in a spectrum that's considered either to be formal or informal, or anywhere in between. Now with the formal translations, they're also often called word-for-word translations. But what the translator does when taking the original language focuses more on translating each word rather than the readability. Where an informal translation, or often called a thought-for-thought translation, focuses more on readability of the scripture or passage or verse than each individual word being translated. Here's a chart that will give you a better idea of where the most common translations fall on that spectrum. So as you can see, Bibles like the KJV, ESV, and NASB are more formal in their translation, where Bibles like the NLT, or the New Living Translation, and the Living Bible are going to be more informal. My recommendation for a new Christian is that you go more for the formal translations. The reason is because the more informal you get, the more influence you're going to get from the translator. Or the more thought for thought the translation, the more opinion is placed into the text by the one translating. I see these more as a commentary to the Bible rather than one to be studied. That's why if you're firm in your foundations and have been in the faith for a while, then these translations will provide you a different perspective on the verses. Now, I'm not saying that all these translations are bad. I'm just saying that they're not a good way of sparking thought in a new Christian. Leave me a comment if you want to see a video of a more in-depth look at Bible translations. So the second thing to consider is, what is your reading level? It is important that you choose a translation that best suits your level of reading. What you don't want to do is choose a translation that is beyond your current ability. Here's a quick guide that will show you the different types of translations based on reading levels. You can find this guide by doing a quick Google search. So you can see that if you read at a 5th grade level, it's probably not a good idea to jump straight into the King James or the RSV. I do recommend that you get something that will challenge you to help your reading grow. So at a 5th grade level, maybe get the New King James, which is at a 7th grade level, or if you're at a 7th grade level, get the ESV, which is at a 10th grade level. The opposite is also true. So if you are at a 12th grade, you don't want to go get the New Living Translation to be your primary study Bible. So the third thing to consider is, what are you going to be using this Bible for? Or what is your primary use for this Bible? Are you looking more for an in-depth Bible study? One that you can dig into the details and look at writing style and pronouns and verbs and sentence structure? For this, you probably want to go more of the formal translations. So I would recommend the King James, the ESV, and the NASB. Those will work best for you. Or are you looking more for a reading Bible, a daily reading Bible? Something that flows well and you can just sit down and open and just read through. For this, I would recommend more of like the NIV or the NLT. Or maybe you're looking for a Bible that's just all-purpose. You want it for Bible studies, you want it for daily reading, you also want this to be your primary Bible that you bring to church services. For this, I would recommend more of the mid-range, so the ESV or even the New King James. I think those will all be very good translations for you. And the fourth thing to consider is, which translation does your church use? It is important when choosing a translation that you consider which one the rest of your church family is using. What you don't want to do is get the New Living Translation when the preacher is preaching out of the King James Version. It will only be beneficial for you to be on the same page pun intended, as the rest of the congregation. That way you're not confused, and neither is anybody else, especially if you're going to be doing things like small groups or Bible studies or something like that. Okay, so those were the 4 things to consider, and now which ones do I use personally? Well, the first one is the King James Version. This is the one that I actually preach out of because the congregation that I serve is using the King James Version, but this is actually the King James Version Easy Reader, or KJVER. I personally do not care so much about the these and the thous. So what they did with this Bible is they replaced all of those archaic words with a more modern word. It didn't change anything about the King James Version. It is the King James Version. It's just they updated some of those archaic words. So this is the one that I preach out of. This is the one that I usually do all my studying out of. I'll use other translations to cross-reference. So I'll use a lot of times the New King James. I'll also use the NASB for studying, things like that. But the one that I read daily is actually the ESV. I just prefer this one. It's easier to read. It's easier for me to understand too. And I just really like the way that this is structured. Again, none of these translations are really bad. I prefer more, obviously, of the formal translations. That's what I gravitate to because I like the study. I like to find out the meaning for myself rather than going to the informal translations or the thought-for-thought translations. I really don't do anything or look at anything on the spectrum below the NIV. All of those, again, like I said before, to me are more of a commentary, where I like more of the word-for-word translations. But that's all for this video. Thank you so much for joining me. Remember that if you like this video, hit the like button. It really does help me out. And also subscribe so you know when more videos like this are released. Leave in the comment section what your favorite translation is. I would love to hear from you. God bless.